bringing you inside the USL Championship and League One.
Segmer's got there, Marquinhos! He's been knocking on the door! He knocks it down!
Diving into all the biggest stories and top headlines.
You are ripping and roaring today.
This is USL All Access.
It's almost impossible to recreate that level of magic.
With Mike Watts and Devon Kerr on SiriusXM FC.
And welcome everyone to a new edition of USL All Access. Happy 2025 and happy to have you along for another season covering the championship here on SiriusXM FC, on the SiriusXM app, as well as on the USL YouTube page every week from now until the time we say goodbye to the season with the USL Championship final in November. Mike Watts joined by Devon Kerr. If you're unfamiliar with this bunch, get ready to get real familiar. We're going to get deep in the weeds week in and week out. Devon's not always going to appreciate it, but that's the world we live in. Devon, happy to spend another year with you. Happy that there's no contract haggling over the offseason. These multi-year deals have really paid off. Let's get after it, pal. Let's do the thing.
Great to be back, brother. It's I felt like this felt like a longer offseason. Well needed. For sure, as you and I are regularly put through the ringer in the best of ways. But this offseason felt longer. And, you and I had a conversation about 2 weeks ago, and I said, I could use a little bit longer. Now, I've got some own personal stuff going on that we'll get to that probably had me through the looking glass, not necessarily excited about the upcoming weeks. But now I'm ready. After I've gone through some of that stuff, I'm sitting here and I was going over through rosters, looking at games, breaking down some of the new fixture competitions that we're going to have. And I'm ready to go, man. Let's get into it.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. Dev, before we get going, what's off-season look like for you?
I worked until December. I believe I flew home on the 18th or 19th from College Cup, which is NCAA's national championships. And I got run into the ground by family and friends for about 2.5 weeks through the holidays. I spent 3.5 weeks of just pure heavenly chaos, going to the beach, hanging with the dogs. And as I am talking to you right now, you'll notice, for people that are familiar with the show, that the background's a little bit different. I'm laid up in bed right now. I went through 4 separate procedures 5 days ago on my left knee to try and get my life back in order. That's my off season. I am non-weight bearing for a month, though I promise next week we will be back in the friendly confines of my 7x7 cube with an acceptable backdrop. How about yourself?
Yeah, I can't wait for it. Hope that's a very comfortable pillow. I'm sure Casey has not fluffed it, and that's just fine. Peg leg?
Peg
cane?
leg. Yeah, peg leg. Crutches.
Crutches.
Peg leg and crutches. I'm not sure what hurts more right now, my underarms and my hands from being on the crutches, or my actual knee itself. Yeah. The swelling's gone down in one area. The other side, I've invested in a lot of lotion. We'll say it that way. I don't go for the whole rag over the crutch thing.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm bowing down to the process. I'm not doing that.
Yeah. So Devon is very lotional with his crutches. Understood. All right. Off season for me is there's a baby on the way. I'm not sure if we got to that at the end of last season, but there's a baby boy coming in May, which will necessitate the annual walking of the cat by Devon and friends, as I probably will step away for a brief stint. St. John's is ranked in the top 10. They play their home games at Madison Square Garden, and I do a lot of work there. So got off the plane at the end of November from the final in Colorado Springs, and have only jumped on a plane a couple times since, and excited to get on the road a little bit, but more excited to expand the family mid-season. It's going to be a great year personally and a lot professionally. For those unfamiliar with the show, Devon is one of the lead analysts, works week to week with MLS on Apple TV, has been with the USL Championship now closing in on the better part of a decade as we hit this 2025 season, including a lengthy stint as the lead national voice for CBS and ESPN. I've been working with Amazon Prime on their NWSL games, as well as a ton of stuff for CONCACAF, but also worked with USL Championship since 2015. So with all that in mind, for those who are new to the format, let's talk about the actual format of the season. We're going to chat a little bit about the new managers in the league, some of which is new sheriff going to old country or old country going to a new sheriff. There's a ton of player movement to chat about. We may have a chance to look at the schedule here today. If not, we'll continue to pore over it as the weeks come. And then as we go into the next 2 weeks, we're going to sort of go line by line through the championship, give you an idea of what each team can look forward to. We'll do the East and the West over 2 separate shows, all leading up to the start of the season, the first weekend of March. Dev, let's start with the format to this coming season, which is a substantial change for the championship. And you can say as well for League One, although in a different way. The championship remains on 24 teams. Right after our final episode of the season last year, Memphis folded, sold their franchise rights to Santa Barbara in California. Lexington has made the move from League One to the championship. Right off the bat, Lexington is not messing around. And we'll talk about it a lot, but Lexington has splashed. I don't think the least of which reason they recognize Big Brother is in their own state. Is that a fair assessment?
It's I don't even know. First of all, I don't know if Big Brother is fair for Louisville, considering what they've done historically within the USL Championship.
Daddy?
Yeah, that's probably that's it, Daddy. I would say that you're spot on with it. I would go a step further, Mike, and say that the level of aggression that we're getting out of Lexington in terms of roster build and the financial capability that we're bringing with it is not changing, has changed the transfer market across the entire landscape of the USL Championship. I can't tell you how many conversations I have with front office execs and coaches talking about their desire, certainly, but also the necessity that they have to have on their side to try and keep pace. Forget about the roster build itself for a second. I'm just talking financials. Because when we go into some of our favorite games this year, I'm actually going to throw some names out of why I think this one Lexington fixture is going to be oh so important. But they're not easing their way into this thing. They are trying to come out of the gate immediately to make an impact with this league. And it's going to be interesting as well because, remember, they're so close to each other, but yet Louisville stays in the East. Lexington's going to be in the Western Conference of the USL Championship.
Yeah, so we will see them this year, but not home and home in a traditional league format. Let's get to that for a moment. For a minute, we had a balanced schedule. With 24 teams in the championship, home and home, that's 22 games right there. You play the 12 teams from the other conference, and now you're at 34. Everyone's played everyone.
By the way, the decade together that you referenced coming into the show, or thereabouts in terms of tenure of years, we got it once.
We begged for it.
We begged for it, and we got it once.
We got it once.
That was the Christmas present that you asked for every single year, and then you finally get it, and you're oh so excited. And next year, you don't even get a stocking.
I mean, look, I wouldn't say we didn't get a stocking. Look, so it used to be you'd play half your games at home, half on the road against the opposite conference. Was it perfect? No, but it was as close as you were going to get without playing 42 games like you're playing in League Two in England. Point being, that is not the case anymore, and there's reasons for that. The unbalanced schedule now is 30 games instead of 34. Plus 4 games in the Jägermeister Cup. We'll touch on that in a moment. You'll play everyone in your conference home and home straight up. That's simple enough. You'll only play 8 of the 12 teams in the other conference. So as opposed to complaining about, well, we played Phoenix on the road, but they played Phoenix at home, and there's going to be something of an inequity as we get down to the end of the Shield race where some manager – somewhere is going to say, well, we played the entire top 4 in the West, and they played the top, the bottom 4 in the West instead. Who cares?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. games are games. You got your schedule. This is the world you live in now. So the Open Cup will continue. 14 teams from League One. They're all in it. They're going to jump in right from the first round. There are also 8 teams from the championship that by standing will jump into the first round. We're only a month and a week away from starting the Open Cup on Tuesday, March 18th. Then the final 16 teams from the championship will go in the third round. Every pro team will get an amateur team in the opening round of the tournament. Not all of MLS is in again, Devin, but MLS is involved. The next pro teams are involved. Given the overarching landscape of where we're at right now, is this a best case scenario for what we could have anticipated year over year?
100%. Considering, and you and I heard these conversations regularly during last year's tournament, the idea that MLS wouldn't participate at all.
Right.
The possibility, Mike, and I understand that this is probably way at the end of a pipe dream, not in a good way, for some of the execs in the front office to get rid of this tournament. There was a chance that this tournament would not happen at all. So to go from, okay, maybe we're not going to get this, percentages slim to none, but still a possibility, to getting a bigger tournament than we did the year prior, 100% it's best case scenario. Everybody's always going to be looking at the same exact thing that we're looking for every single year, and it's chaos. It's no different than the FA Cup, than the Carabao Cup in the UK, and how they play the game spread between, the Prem and the Championship. They want to see a Championship team take down an MLS team. People want to see a League One team step up against a Championship team, or if you're a Union Omaha fan, slay some of the dragons that have been MLS teams of seasons past. That's what everybody wants. They want chaos, and you're going to get that opportunity right from the get-go. I think the committee did a great job, again, maneuvering through all of the BS that was behind the scenes to ensure that not only the fans, but the players and these organizations were getting something better than what we got in the previous iteration.
Yep. So Open Cup returns on March 18th. The Jägermeister Cup is the intra-league, call it the Carabao Cup of sorts, right? The EFL trophy. It is the USL's intra-league cup between the Championship and League One. All 38 teams are in between League One and the Championship. Group stage, 76 total games. It starts April 25th. By that point, think about it, a lot of teams will already be out of the Open Cup just by the nature of knockout competition, which will lessen a bit of the drain that comes with if you had started it earlier. Doesn't count against your regular season anymore. Top 8 go to the knockout. Those are your 6 group winners. And then the 2 highest remaining scoring teams. If you lose all 4 games but score 5 goals in all 4 games, there's a real chance you're going to go through. And last year they made the first tiebreaker goal scored when it was only a League One tournament. And it is a distinct effort to say, how can we make this more entertaining than the average game? And I actually appreciate it. And I think it worked.
Can I tell you why I like the idea of this the most?
Bring it.
Is that the realization by the powers that be that put this together, and for the fans to understand this as well, the financial backing that it takes for these teams on a yearly basis, just within league play, travel, roster build, food, facilities, that's a lot. It's a big ask. When you have the Open Cup come into play, one of the biggest things that you and I talk to with guys behind the scenes is really to make a run at things, it's more of an investment financially. Because fixture congestion, I get all of that, and I'm going to get there in a second, but the amount of money that it costs these teams, especially when you're the road team, to travel all over the place. I mean, everybody looks back at Sacramento Republic in 2022 and their run, the historic run that was to the Open Cup final, falling just short to Orlando City. But the amount of money that they had to spend to be able to do that, playing all of these games, it takes a toll on them. I love the fact that they pulled back the reins a little bit. I know fans are going to look at it and go, oh, we don't get a 34-game regular season anymore. No, but it does create balance within the two competitions. I'm specifically referencing now league play and Jägermeister Cup, because you're basically pulling from one spot and putting in another. For them to have taken more games, 4 games, and put them in this, well, now you're asking, okay, we've got 34-game regular season. Forget postseason play for a second. You've got most teams usually progressing past the first game in Open Cup. Again, fingers crossed if you're a USL Championship fan. If you're League One, you have other ideas. But then to throw in 4 more games, home or away, that's a lot on an organization. And even though you could be the recipient of the home game, I get it, and that's your turnstile, and that's where a lot of money comes from, it still costs a lot for this to go on. So I love the fact that they did pull back from one area and then push it to the Jägermeister Cup, as opposed to just piling it on, because I think that would cause a little bit more suffering for these teams, and we don't have to deal with that.
Yep. So that's what the overarching season map will look like in the championship. Again, top 8, each conference are slated to get in to the USL Championship playoffs. Then there, Devin and I will be at the end of the season yet again with CBS for the final. You'll see games on CBS through Golasso, CBS Sports Network, and CBS Network Television. You'll see games on ESPN2, ESPN Plus throughout the season as well. It's not going to be hard to find it, and you'll hear plenty of games right here on SiriusXM FC, as well as this wild and crazy show. When we come back, wild and crazy movement among managers over this offseason, including a couple of real shockers, intra-league, and some old managers making their way back to the States. We'll chat about it on the other side of the break. This is USL All Access on SiriusXM FC.
Let's get back to USL All Access on SiriusXM FC with Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
We are back here on USL All Access. It is the first game of the season for us, so to speak, the opening show. Happy to have you along. We'll be with you every Tuesday night, minus a handful of conflicts that'll occur along the way. Mike Watts, Devon Kerr, happy to be back. Emmett McConnell's at the controls as ever. Our appreciation to our main man for putting this thing together. Covering the championship week in and week out, and as we leave the offseason, Dev, plenty of managerial changes around the championship. We're going to talk about player movement and some scheduling items later on. Let's chat about managers. And I think maybe the biggest shock to the outside world might be that Dennis Sanchez left Las Vegas after the second biggest year-over-year point turnaround in league history to go take over the number 1 team in the West, who they chased most of the season, New Mexico, after Eric Quill departed for Dallas. So, for those trying to keep up, this is where it ends up. Quill leaves New Mexico for Dallas. Sanchez leaves Las Vegas for New Mexico. And of all people in all the world, Antonio Nocerino leaves Miami, who had the worst independent season, I think, in league history.
Okay, yes.
To go to Las Vegas. Here's a quick thought from me. Nocerino, his record at Miami is irrelevant. He was asked to play a bunch of children. There was no chance that they were going to be successful. The first 5 games, you went, hey, maybe they're onto something, and very quickly it became apparent they did not have the weaponry to play that game. Dennis Sanchez, the rumors started midway through the fall that everyone wanted a piece of that.
I'd go back a little further, but I'm with you.
Yeah. What he did in Vegas was, I've never seen it. Built the whole thing in late January into February, and that thing just kept getting better and better. I don't know that we'll ever see that kind of build in the league succeed to that extent ever again. But now he gets his shot at a much bigger club, and credit to the ownership in New Mexico for going out and getting their man.
If you're Terry Boss and Sam Dorr, you're probably hoping that you're wrong, that you never see that type of build again. But it's different.
The
timeline's different. Yeah,
the timeline is different.
The financial backing is different. The timeline is different. Recognizing the fact that Dennis Sanchez got hired 2 weeks before preseason started. No disrespect to Lexington. Let's just say that, A, they don't have a changeover in ownership because that ownership group has been set in place. They had a longer runway, right?
They were doing big signings in December, and they brought back, I think it's 6 or 7 guys from the League One team.
Depending on who you ask, those signings might have happened a little bit sooner from a verbal standpoint, but I'm with you.
It is worth noting, and NWSL's seen a lot of this. I've heard a lot of, we have a deal with blank.
So-and-so, yeah. Well, because legally, they're not allowed to sign them. Legally, they're not allowed to talk to them, right?
Right, and here's where that comes into play. If you're an impending free agent, right? So NWSL just started this. USL has always had this. You don't hold rights.
Just grudges.
6 months before the conclusion of your contract, you are allowed to start negotiating with other teams. That's a FIFA bylaw. It's a bylaw, and that's why those conversations are happening starting in July.
So, yeah, and I'm with you on all that. So the interesting thing to me, the Miami to Vegas is strange, right? No disrespect to Nocerino. You would think that any manager that they brought in, Joey Bautista, great ownership group that he's brought in, spearheaded all of that, turned it around, that they would probably chase someone who had at least marginal success, certainly someone that has knowledge of the league. We check one of those boxes. I don't know if it's the right hire. I'm with you. I think it's very difficult to pass judgment on what went on in Miami because of everything that was there. The Sanchez thing to me is more interesting, and here's why. I've basically, through the grapevine, as always, because we don't implicate others here, Michael.
No.
I've been led down the path of the Eric Quill idea to Dallas. That seed was planted very early on in the year, especially with Nico Estevez and his lack of performances there. Whether or not they were going to keep their manager, the interim, I should say, after the fact, they weren't sure. Quill was ingrained in FC Dallas, whether it was with Academy, certainly his success at North Texas. Some of those players follow him to New Mexico. Him departing, great. Sanchez coming in, courted a bit by Sacramento. We'll get to that in a second as we move to that organization. But quickly moved aside. And basically, I've been told that Vegas fumbled the ball. That this was a paperwork issue. I'm not going to say how or what because I'm not 100% confident. I'm about 80% confident, given the conversations had. But that the appropriate paperwork wasn't turned in a specific manner for him to be re-signed without being poached by someone else. That's probably the most appropriate way to say it. If that's the case, that is a rough way to lose your manager. Because if it is a negotiating window where let's say that they have this, you've got a negotiating window of 2 months, 3 months, whatever it is on his contract, or to pick up the option, whatever, before he's allowed to go and talk to someone else. If you fumbled in that fashion, I mean, is there a bigger blunder from a managerial standpoint in the history of the championship? From what we saw year one and Dennis Sanchez. Now, here's the other thing. You and I, obsessed probably isn't the right word, but it's pretty close, of our interaction with him, our respect for his playing style, certainly the manner in which he depicted himself to the public on the opportunity we had to interview him on this show. He was incredible. Personally, I think you would probably agree, top 5 all-time favorite interviews on this show.
Yeah, he's up there.
Because of everything that was put in place. For that, if it happened in that fashion, no accusations, if it happened in that manner, and he gets to walk out the door and go to New Mexico, which we haven't even spoken about by the fact that New Mexico United and Sacramento Republic, the winner of the Western Conference last year and 5th overall, still a stacked team, both with managerial changes. Those organizations don't seem to be sitting too bad.
Nope.
If that happened, that's a big, big mistake. Now, you also have to look forward, right? I mean, it's neither here nor there at this point in time. Great opportunity for Dennis Sanchez. I'm really curious to see what he does with that group because I don't believe he overperformed with Las Vegas. was on that scent early. You and I talked about it, gave them a ton of credit, felt that they were right up there. I do believe Eric Quill overperformed. I don't believe that was the best team in the Western Conference. Results, they proved it. They deserved it. In terms of roster build and capability, even if you ask me now, I wouldn't have put them as the number one team, would you?
No.
No. So when he steps in, playing style a little bit different, coaching style a little bit different, certainly the roster build that we saw in Vegas, how does that now matriculate into a very well-established and well-respected organization in New Mexico United? When it comes to owners within this league, ambition, character, it's hard to argue that Peter Trevisani is not right there in that top 5 conversation as well.
Yep. So Dennis Sanchez moves to New Mexico. You mentioned Sacramento. They were battling for 1-2 seed most of the year.
Yeah.
They finished in 5th on the last day. Devastating, lost their home playoff game. You go on the road, you're out. Mark Briggs is out. Neill Collins, 2021 Manager of the Year at Tampa Bay, leaves for Barnsley, goes to Wraith in his native Scotland, comes back to the league and takes over a team that seems really well built for what he likes to do. Everything about that feels like it is a home run hire. You and I have known Briggsy for a long time, going back to Real Monarchs. I do hope that he lands on his feet quickly.
He will.
The expectation there is extraordinarily high, and the playoff success, I understand the Open Cup, as well as I think a lot of fans felt a stale style of play is probably what did it. Even if you can sit there and say that outside the 1 year they missed the playoffs, they've been a top 5 team consistently, been to an Open Cup final that no one else has. He juggled a lot of stuff.
So, all right, I want to start with Briggs real quick. In terms of how long it takes him to get a position, I'm not really sure there. I can tell you conversations with him and people behind the scenes that opportunities were present for him. He's also looking for the right fit for his family. I don't know how long it's going to take him. There's no doubt in my mind he's going to get a job. I also wouldn't be surprised, Mike, if it wasn't in this country. Results at Sacramento. Open Cup for sure. No doubt that even prior to Mark Briggs taking over as the head coach, they've been the darlings of the Open Cup for quite some time, regularly progressing into the final 16 with wins over, the Sounders and San Jose in years prior, 2020, to Mark Briggs taking the helm. Playoff success never followed. And it's kind of funny because historically, they've never really had playoff success. Hear me out for a second. 2014, the only expansion team ever to come in and go and win a title in their first season. Of course, we saw.
Yeah, and look, like the key piece of that run is literally called the Miracle.
100%. The Miracle. Yes, it's called the Miracle. Miracle of Bonnie. I mean,
right.
And so, great. You win your title right out of the gate. Whether it was under Preki or Simon Elliott or Mark Briggs, the good news is from a historical standpoint, their coaches actually, they did well for themselves. Playoff success never really followed. They were the 8 seed. They upset the 1. They were the 1. They got upset by the 8. Like, it's with Open Cup success in 2022, that point right there, for some reason, in the front office, as well as in the fans' minds, they were title contenders no matter what. And I want to be very, very clear. From a playing style, I couldn't agree more. In terms of results, no. You can't say that. You can't look at that and say, oh, we've been so good in the playoffs, we deserve to be every single year viewed as one of the number one teams. I think there's an asterisk to that, Mike. I think you have the capability of saying, we're really good, we're one of the number one seeds, we're a top seed, we need to get there. But the Seattle Sounders in MLS can have that conversation for a reason. Nashville can't, right? And those are two teams that regularly are finishing, except for last year, top 3, top 4 in their conference. The difference is postseason success follows one, it doesn't the other. Louisville, another really good conversation. Memphis, another good conversation. The stat that is still astronomical in my mind, how this is possible, is that Memphis 901 FC, up until they were dissolved last year, were the only team in the past 5 years to finish in the top 4 3 consecutive seasons. That's insane. And yet, postseason success lacking. So that's kind of where I'm leading this here when it comes for Sacramento. Listen, I know Sacramento fans might disagree with some of that. That's fine. It's simple. The historical value in terms of playoff success is not there, but it needs to be there. And that's what Neill Collins is going to bring. Neill Collins, 1.85 points per game in USL Championship history regular season. That's one of the best ever. Not in the past 5 years, not during his tenure at the Tampa Bay Rowdies, ever in the history of this league. That is a massive coup for Todd Donovan and Kevin Nagel to go and get him and bring him to the Western Conference.
Yeah, and that's talking about a basically 57-point average in a 30-game season. That's about a 63 or 64-point average in a 34-game season.
And I'll tell you one thing. Here's one of the things, probably the biggest differences to me between Neill Collins and Mark Briggs. It's not a bad thing. Neill Collins, moving forward, is more adaptable.
Yep.
At least he was at the Tampa Bay Rowdies. Neill Collins, and I can't wait to bring this up when we bring him on the first time, and we'll definitely do so. I can remember for the first 18 months, I need a 10, I need a 10, I need a 10. I need a 10. Really long, extended conversations with him and searches throughout that organization trying to find the right guy. They thought they had it a couple of times. It went from that to, we can play 2 10s. We can play 3 strikers. We can play 1 10. We don't need a single 10. Right. We're gonna go flat. We don't need that at all. We don't need that chance creator. He's a little bit more adaptive in playing style on the attacking side than Mark Briggs is. Again, neither good nor bad, just a different style. Really excited to see it.
Yep, Sacramento started 11 unbeaten last year, finished 1-6-2 in their final 9 games. And that ends up being a managerial change in Sacramento. Dev, got to move quickly through a handful of these. Pamadou Ka, we talked about before last season ended. Diego Gomez took over as the interim in Phoenix. Pamadou Ka comes in from Charlotte. I think we're both high on that move. Darren Powell is moving to the front office in Lexington. Quick thought on Terry Boss taking over.
I'll give you 3 here, by the way. Pamadou Ka, Phoenix Rising, they're going to be very young. Some inexperience in areas, but with the build and what I'm hearing behind the scenes, excited to see what that blend is going to be. Certainly a long-term project, but you would expect them to make the playoffs. Terry Boss, this is about familiarity for Terry Boss, both within the MLS build, his time in Austin for sure, but even a little bit further back, bringing guys over from Oregon State, as well as Sam Dorr moving into the front office there. He did so moving from the league late part of last year. Guys from FC Tulsa coming in. Again, familiarity for a lot of these managers, for a lot of these front office execs, is what creates success, and especially immediately to get that gel going right away. The third one, Mike, I know you were going to bring it up. I'm going to do it anyway. Mario Sanchez moving to technical director at FC Tulsa. Luke Spencer moving into the main seat. The number 1 chair is going to be interesting. He's very young. He's never held a head coaching position at the professional ranks before. But I do like the fact that his success, his knowledge of the league, as well as how well he was intertwined into the academy system at Louisville, I think he's going to have a bigger grasp now. I think he's going to have a better relationship with the front office, and he's going to be able to maneuver things a little bit better, allow Mario Sanchez to go chase some things outside the white lines to find them success.
Yeah, and Luke did a good job. I enjoyed speaking with him a lot as we went through the triumvirate period when John Hackworth took over in Louisville. You know, he was quick to say, everyone said, John came and changed it to a 4-back. He's like, no, we did that.
We did that.
Fair enough. Big fan of Luke and excited for him. Here's the last one before we head to break. San Antonio. Alan Marcina, under a new sporting director last year, tried to substantially change the DNA of San Antonio FC, and it didn't work out. They got to midseason and they started to shift back, recognizing that the season was getting away. The playoffs were still there to be had, but you had to start having it right now. Alan Marcina's out in San Antonio, and I don't think everybody fell in love with his style because when you play against it, you hate it. I think there were some injury issues that just killed them every single year, and whether that was systemic or how you get good players to come to San Antonio might be that there's something niggling in their past. Who knows? But Allen being out in San Antonio is probably a bit of a surprise, even if they had been on the outside looking in.
Yeah, I would add that that's not all on Alan Marcina.
No.
Marco Ferruzzi coming in, different style, views the game differently, and so some of those systematic changes that you saw were coming from a notch above. The views didn't necessarily align. Neither here nor there at the end of the day when it comes to the current situation that San Antonio FC is in. They just needed to find a way to get those two, arguably the most two important people, especially with the departure of Tim Holt a few years ago. You got to get them on the same page. And that's what they're looking for here. Plenty of talent on that roster. Healthy, absolutely. Systematic, different conversation. Same thing went on in Sacramento, and they found a way to at least get themselves to the finish line. So you get those two people seeing eye to eye, I'm sure the players are going to follow.
All right, there's the changes in the managerial ranks. When we come back, look at a couple players on their way out the door, making moves up the ladder, making moves off the ladder altogether, and some serious player movement over the offseason. All coming up here on USL All Access on SiriusXM FC.
Giving insight to all the biggest moments in Championship and League One. This is USL All Access on SiriusXM FC with Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
We are back on USL All Access on SiriusXM FC. Miss any part of the show, available on the SiriusXM app as well as the USL YouTube page. With the currently laid up Devon Kerr, Mike Watts, who walks briskly. Dev, let's talk about guys who are walking into new journeys in their lives.
I mean, how many times can you just punch me in the face virtually through the screen without coming at me?
I'm not punching your face. I'm punching your knee.
Dear Lord, he came right at me. That was from the top rope, Michael. All right, let's go.
Let's start with happy trails here. Elijah Winder. This is not surprising. Elijah Winder was unbelievable last year. Louisville signed him to a multi-year extension going into the season. Smart business. Talked about that a lot. Elijah gets a little more money. The team makes sure they're ready for the transfer. And here it is. Winder to LA Galaxy. They immediately turn around and get Kevon Lambert for their midfield.
I feel so bad for them.
So, works perfectly. Good for Elijah, man. Follows his brother who went overseas, his younger brother. Wow. I mean, what a year he had alongside Taylor Davila in that midfield.
I feel so bad for Elijah Winder that they have to set the record organization-wise and go trailblazing across the Eastern Conference. I get it. It fell short to only go to the MLS Cup champions.
Yep.
Playing with Ricky Pooch and
not Dejan Joveljic.
No, Dejan Joveljic is gone, obviously. That's a big coup for Sporting Kansas City. But look, Kev Lambert, I love the pickup for them. I think one of the biggest things for me with Kevin Lambert is he's going to be 28 this year. He has seen a lot. It's funny that, he's been on the scene for such a long period of time that you would think he's older, but he has seen so much. The biggest thing for me is finding familiarity within his game. People are kind of going to look at that and go, what are you talking about? He played 23 times last year for San Antonio. Yeah, but as you alluded to earlier, Mike, in San Antonio, they had a bunch of problems last year, stylistic changes, a ton of injuries. There was never any sort of regularity within their play. He was asked to do a ton of different things, and to me, he never felt comfortable. I don't think we've seen him comfortable. I would really say the end of 22, beginning of 23. Friendly reminder, Phoenix Rising sold him in 2023 to Real Salt Lake. He found himself in this gray area where he was way too good to be playing for the Real Monarchs. but he really struggled to get into those 18, 23-man conversations for Pablo Mastroeni and Real Salt Lake. So he didn't get a lot of game time at the end of 23 or the beginning of 24, so he goes out on loan. Minutes are one thing, but quality of play is another. Danny Cruz and co. will be really quick to find him some confidence in that midfield next to Taylor Davila, because as we saw last year, those two, not only were they untouchable in terms of the quality of play, they were unreplaceable. You needed those two in order to find success.
Yep. So the Louisville midfield, one man out, one man in, both with all-league accolades. Bunch of players retiring. These are brought to you by Transfer Market. Nathan Steinwasser had signed a multi-year deal, was in and out at the tail end of the season. Ultimately, he retires, wishing him all the best, the accountant. Speaking of goalkeepers, Adam Grinwis, who was the one in Charleston, has retired. Harry Swartz dealt with a lot of injuries last year. He retires off the roster in New Mexico. Robbie Crawford went out to Monterey Bay, came back to Charleston. That's where he wanted to be. He calls it a career, hangs up his boots. Carter Manley is done, and then at the tail end of last year, we mentioned that Eder Borelli and Yuma were both retiring in their late 30s from El Paso Locomotive. They say goodbye. I'd say Grinwis is the biggest surprise.
Grinwis is probably the biggest surprise. I hate to see Harry Swartz go, man.
I know.
I've loved him ever since he came into the league. Incredible player, incredible person, just such a tremendous amount of respect for how flexible he was in all of the positions asked to play. That's a Brendan Burke product, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to miss him.
Yep. Some other player movement to make mention of, and we're going to go team by team over the next 2 weeks and get everyone caught up on what rosters look like and how much change there's been. Only about 3-4 minutes to chat about it, Dev, so let's bang them out. Birmingham, they finally got their guys, Damas and Trejo. That enough?
Historically in Birmingham, you would say no, because for some reason, I still haven't figured out why. I have a little bit. The striker position just doesn't seem to really produce enough. Outside of Nico Brett a couple of years ago, was that 2019 when he lit it up?
Yep.
2019 or 20. Outside of Nico Brett, no one really ever seems to find success. We talked about the payroll earlier in Lexington and how they've been throwing cash around. This affected Birmingham. They had to spend to get Danny Trejo. They had to spend a lot of money. But Danny Trejo, hard to argue with the season that he had in 2022, helping lead that Phoenix Rising team to the title, that there's a better player suited, especially with a Birmingham team that likes to toy around with a ton of different systems. And Damas, people are going to look at him, title winner. He's got to find someone to play off of and feel comfortable, because a ton of his goals came from the penalty mark last year. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was 12 marks total, and 7 or 8 came from 12 yards out. So he's a very mental player. You know, I mentioned getting Kev Lambert some confidence. None could be truer than for Damas early on in the season.
Maxi Rodriguez, all-league player at Detroit, moves to Rhode Island. Like the fit?
Give it to me. I don't know. Listen, people could argue this for sure, and I would sit at the table and have a beer and talk about it. I don't know if there's a bigger acquisition in terms of necessity for a team than Maxi Rodriguez, right? Mm-hmm. The midfield of Rhode Island FC down the stretch, it struggled to find playmakers, and that's saying something considering the, what is it called? The golden playmaker, golden spoon?
Yeah.
Golden playmaker.
Yeah.
The assist leader. And Noah Fuson was on that team. They moved him, especially at the end of the year and moving into the final, into the wingback spot. He covers a ton of ground. He's brutal in terms of tackling capability. He loves to get involved in every area. He's not afraid to be 5 yards off the box on either end of the field, and I think he gives them real versatility in the way that they're going to have venom going forward.
All right, couple other moves here. Marco Micheletto making the move, New Mexico to Colorado Springs. In their midfield, James Murphy leaves Detroit for Indy. Augie Williams leaves Indy for Pittsburgh, which might revitalize him. Douglas Martinez goes to Charleston from Indy. They need to replace Nick Marcanic's production, goal-scoring-wise, but that's probably internal with M.D. Myers. Tristan Hodge and Connor Donovan are both on the move, leaving Hartford and Sacramento, respectively, to North Carolina. The League One Player of the Year, Liam McKinnon, is headed to Orange County. The former CPL Player of the Year in Canada, Ollie Bassett, is going to Tampa Bay. And then, Dev, last one, the Battery. You had a chance to see them in person. First off, is it Hosu Landry? Where are we now?
Oh, yeah. Not on Hosu Landry, not on Landry, whatever it may be. I can tell you this. He balled out. I was taken back by the level of quality that he brought into the midfield. And he is going to cause the biggest problem for the Charleston Battery. And I mean that because they've still got Chris Allen. And, oh, yeah, they've still got that guy. What's his name? Yeah, he's the best midfielder in the league in Aaron Malloy. The three of them in tandem together, trying to figure out what that's going to look like with an Arturo Rodriguez, Juan David. Like, there's a lot within that midfield conversation. And also, you didn't mention one of the biggest players on the move. I'm going to save it for the next segment when we talk about our favorite games.
Ooh,
it's going to play hand in hand. You'll get excited.
Well done.
All right,
when
we tease, Mike.
It is. When we come back, what Devin said. SiriusXM FC, USL All Access.
You're listening to USL All Access on SiriusXM FC. Here are your hosts, Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
We're back on USL All Access. Miss any part of the show, available on the SiriusXM app tomorrow, as well as the USL YouTube page. Mike, Devin, we've chatted a bit about the regular season, the Jägermeister Cup. Dev, we're going to circle a couple games, circle a couple groups. Jägermeister Cup starts in April. Let me give you a couple rated out of 5 soccer balls, 5 select soccer balls. Group 5 stands out. Louisville-Lexington. You've got Charlotte and North Carolina FC. You've got Richmond and Loudoun. Rivalry group.
I'm out of 5 here, right?
Yes.
3
select balls.
Soccer balls. 3 select soccer balls. To me, it's a little bit top heavy. Listen, Louisville is obviously going to be the standard bearer no matter where they are. Everybody else, to me, is a little bit unknown. The build continues for Ryan Martin and Loud United. Everybody else, Lexington's an upstart. North Carolina's meh. Same thing with Richmond and Charlotte. I don't know what we're getting out of those teams. 3.
All right. Group 4 is Detroit-Pittsburgh. Remember that upset? Hartford,
yeah.
Rhode Island, El Clamico. Portland and Westchester, newcomers in League One. Yay, nay?
4.
I
like this group better than the last one. I think you've got – listen, Westchester's a fun one for sure. You and I have had the opportunity to be around them a ton. But Hartford and Detroit, I think there's going to be a big turnaround for Brendan Burke and Hartford. And Bob Lilly, there's no chance that he's going to shy away from this competition.
And then Group 2, New Mexico, Phoenix. Yay. Copa Tejas, San Antonio, El Paso.
Don't even read the rest.
And then Switchbacks, Omaha, and then there's Texoma in there. I don't know.
Mike, obviously I don't promote this type of behavior, but Group 2 is, as we say, Devon Kerr on a Friday night, overserved.
Okay.
That group is unreal.
5 balls.
It's not fair. 5 select soccer balls, perfectly inflated, no Tom Brady influence.
Love it. All right, Dev, give me a couple games you've got circled. The schedule came out end of December, early this year.
You're doing it the same way. You're going to rate these 1 to 5 select soccer balls. You with me? Awesome. Opening weekend, March 8th, 2025. I can't believe it's 2025. I have trouble saying that. SAC New Mexico United. Debut of Neill Collins, Dennis Sanchez as new managers. Again, as we mentioned this earlier in the show, New Mexico United finished first in the Western Conference last year. Sacramento Republic finished 5th. Certainly doesn't hurt to bring those guys into your technical staff. Thoughts?
4.7 balls. I'm all in.
0.7. I didn't know we could do a partial rating.
Yep.
Okay, good to know.
Ball.
Let's fast forward a month. The debut of USL on CBS in 2025. San Antonio FC hosting Phoenix Rising. It's also the weekend that's going to be bookended by March Madness and the National Championship on CBS. Pa Modou Ka, you talked about him earlier, coming in at the helm of Phoenix. Carlos Lamosa, Caleb Patterson-Sewell as well. We talked about the Memphis stat, the only team in the league that finished top 4 3 seasons in a row out of the last 5 years. Caleb Patterson-Sewell, the architect for that. Rate that for me, Mike.
3 balls for the game, 5 for the vibes.
Love it. May 1st, 2024. Let's do it. Louisville and Lexington Eastern and Western Conference in-state rivalry begins. Terry Boss, Sam Dorr, they come into Lexington. They get Jacob Green, Joe Hafferty, Sofiane Jafal, Speedy Williams. That's the one that I was talking about that you didn't mention. Four-time champion, 3 different teams, trying to become a 5-time champion with 4 different teams. One had never been done. He did it. Now he's trying to set that record a little bit further. And there's some good background here. Again, I mentioned Oregon State. Also a lot of Crew, FC Cincinnati Academy upbringing.
Yep, that's 5.
Okay. Fast forward about a month and a half, 2 months. November. July 19th, Rhode Island versus Hartford. This would normally be 17 games in, halfway through the season. Rhode Island, the opening of Pawtucket. Also, Brendan Burke and his project changing. I think they're going to be much more successful this year. Rhode Island gets Danny Rivera, Aldair Sanchez, Tamu Okiyoshi, a good name to think about. Hartford, Seb Anderson, Jonathan Jimenez, but I'm looking at the back line, Adrian Dispay, Joey Farrell, Jordan Scarlett. They conceded the 4th most goals in 2024, have to be better. Rate it, and I got one more.
Yep, 4.2.
Obviously, Mike, the last, I saved the best for last. It's the USL Championship final on CBS. Not a public date yet, but I'm hearing rumors that it is going to be in the month of November. Everybody at home is like, yeah, Devin, it's in the month of November every year. Thanks.
Great job, bud.
Rate it. 5, Mike. The only answer is 5.
All right, 6. All right, Dev, learn anything from this show?
I learned that it is possible for me to be stagnant during a show, not standing, not utilize my hands, and still get words out of my mouth.
Yep, and I learned this is the first week of my entire life that I have moved more meters, more yards, more miles than Devon Kerr. For Devin, Mike, Emmett, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again next week. We'll preview the Eastern Conference, then the West on February 25th, and then kickoff week March 4th. It's all here on USL All Access on SiriusXM FC. So long for now, everybody.
This is USL All Access. If you missed any portion of the program, listen back anytime on the SXM app.